Hi all, good to see you here. And I had a little starting trouble with streaming live on Facebook, but good. I'm glad everyone is here. My name is Mugdha Pradhan. I am the founder of Thrive Functional Nutrition Consulting. I'm a functional nutritionist myself, and I've been doing these series of FB live sessions, webinars called Own Your Body. And this is the third one out of those. And what we're going to talk about is lifestyle diseases. So before we start, I've kind of outlined the flow of how this is going to go. And so that you just know where we are when we are talking about any particular topic. So the first question, why this topic? Why am I even speaking about lifestyle diseases, right? So if some of you have been following me on Facebook, then you know it's health is something that I'm really passionate about. We have been doing really amazing work at Thrive in reversing a whole lot of lifestyle diseases, a whole lot of chronic diseases. And the point being, it's so easy to reverse things like high BP and um, obesity or diabetes or PCOD. It's really easy to reverse most of those diseases, and most people struggle with those, or they become dependent on the entire pharmaceutical industry to manage those diseases. So this is why I'm talking about this. Uh, the thing is that we only have one thing that is really our own, and that is our body on this planet. And this body is a gift. It's a gift that we get to experience our life. And what happens is a lot of institutions actually try to take away our autonomy from our body. They try to. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good. So I just saw somebody making a sign that I'm not audible. So that's the reason why I wanted to talk about this, that, ultimately a human being should have ownership of their body. They don't need to outsource that to um, pharmaceutical institutions or the government or doctors who are really not there to solve that health problem, but who are there to just kind of put them on medication after medication. A human being shouldn't really be doing that. And that is the reason why we are talking about this topic now. The what I want to talk about is what really are lifestyle diseases, right? So what would you categorize as a lifestyle disease? Well, any disease that happens to you as a consequence of the choices you make about what you're putting into your body, any of those can be categorized as a lifestyle disease, because every choice that you're making while you're living a life on this planet is going to impact your body. And if those choices are in the wrong direction, then those impacts are going to be in the wrong direction, right? So when we speak of diabetes, for example, everybody knows diabetes is a lifestyle disease, right? But people think diabetes happens because of eating a lot of sweet. And that is completely untrue. Diabetes doesn't happen because of eating a lot of sweet. Diabetes happens because of many other root causes, which we will talk about. But a lifestyle disease is a disease that, you are not born with, but has happened to you over time because of different factors that you have encountered through living your life. So maybe you've eaten a lot of inflammatory food and that's triggering a disease. Maybe you were exposed to a lot of toxins and that's triggering a disease. But broadly speaking, what most of us know as lifestyle diseases are diabetes, obesity, like excess weight, weight gain itself, people know is caused by poor lifestyle choices. High BP, right? A lot of people think that hypertension or high BP is genetic, that just because everybody in your family had it, you also should be suffering that. And that is completely untrue. So high BP is completely driven by lifestyle and the choices you make. A dysfunctional thyroid. A lot of women especially think that because their mothers had a thyroid problem or because their sisters have a thyroid problem, they also would be ending up with a thyroid problem. And that again is something that I would want to bust as a myth. So thyroid also can get impacted by the kind of lifestyle choices you're making. PCOD, PCOS is completely driven by lifestyle, right? So there is no genetic need for a woman to go through a dysfunctional reproductive system. So PCOD, PCOS is another lifestyle disorder. high BP, I already mentioned. Diabetes, I spoke of. Excess weight, I spoke of. There are many other diseases that one wouldn't encounter on a day-to-day basis in terms of like, oh, I heard about this thing happening. But there are many other diseases that also are triggered by lifestyle choices, like even something like fibromyalgia, even something like IBS and IBD, which is inflammatory bowel syndrome and inflammatory bowel disorder. So both of these also are triggered by wrong lifestyle choices. We genetically are not designed to have diseases. Genetically, our entire body is designed to heal all the time. The body wants to heal, the body wants to recover. That's the design of the body. So that's what I would categorize as lifestyle diseases. Maybe a dictionary definition of a lifestyle disease might be different than what I'm saying, but any disease that occurs out of the outcome of the lifestyle choices that you're making is a lifestyle disease in our definition. So now then I would like to move on to what I've written down here as diagnosed as versus undiagnosed, right? And this is really the problem. Like I've heard of so many people talk of somebody who suddenly passed away saying that, this person was so healthy, how come he suddenly had a heart attack? And there is no way somebody will have a heart attack if they were healthy. In all likelihood, this person had an undiagnosed disorder in the body, which is what caused that heart attack, right? So diagnosed lifestyle diseases, which means that you've been given a label. So your blood sugar level is high for a long time. You go to the doctor says, oh, your blood sugar levels are high. That means you have diabetes. So you're diagnosed with diabetes. With high BP, you might experience some symptoms. You might go to a doctor, the doctor will check your BP, and then the doctor will say, oh, your BP is above this, the standard 120/80. So you have high BP, here, take this medicine and let's suppress your BP. With obesity, again, you check on your weighing scale or you take your measurements, and then because your weight is beyond a certain BMI level, now it's categorized as obesity, right? Like you have excess weight. So these are undiagnosed, but what I really want to focus on are the ones that go undiagnosed for a very, very long time. So for a lot of people, before they develop diabetes, before they develop full-blown diabetes, they have so many symptoms of insulin resistance, which is the root cause of diabetes, right? So a lot of people experience symptoms such as, so for example, somebody who might have undiagnosed diabetes, they would experience frequent urination and a lot of thirst. They will experience, sudden drops in energy, like at maybe 4 o'clock or something, they'll just have no energy. They'll feel very sleepy. They'll want a tea or coffee at that time. Or people with undiagnosed diabetes might experience jitteriness and shakiness just around meal time. So if their meal is late by maybe 30 minutes or something, if they've not eaten on time, they'll start getting really cranky and anxious and angry. They might get some tremors. The other aspect of undiagnosed diabetes is sweet cravings, right? So sweets don't cause diabetes, but because glucose is the primary source of fuel for the body, if you are diabetic, your body's ability to use glucose is impaired. So energy production gets impacted. And at that time, what happens is you will start craving for sweets, right? So craving for sweets, having energy drops, needing tea or coffee a lot, feeling really irritable and anxious and angry, and getting these like slight jitters just around meal times, especially if they're a little late. Excessive thirst, excessive urination, all of these are signs of undiagnosed diabetes. When it comes to high BP, often people don't know that sometimes their headaches, sometimes their palpitations, sometimes their feeling of anxiety itself can be triggered because of blood pressure changes, and they just think that something happened, there was some stressor in the environment, and that is what triggered it. But at least diabetes, we have far more significant symptoms to describe it. High BP goes undiagnosed for a really long time. When it comes to heart health, because heart disease is one of the biggest lifestyle diseases, it's one of the biggest killers. I have prepared a few slides. I'll switch to the screen share view soon. But heart diseases, can somebody whose vessels are making sound, please mute their mic? I think it's... Okay. So, no, somebody still. Yeah, so like I was saying, with heart health, also a lot of heart conditions actually go undiagnosed because with heart, the thing is there are no predictable symptoms. You can't say that this pain in my chest is a heart problem, right? That pain in the chest can occur. Okay, can you please? Yeah, I think everyone's muted now. So with heart, it's very, very hard to predict that you could have clogged up arteries, you could have blocked arteries, and that is what is going to trigger a sudden episode. But, um, you know, if you have drops in energy, uh, if you feel like when you climbed up a few stairs and then it was very hard for you to catch your breath, something that shouldn't be that difficult, or you instead of walking slowly you walked a little faster than your normal pace and then you became out of breath, then that is an indication that probably your blood circulation is not as optimal as it should be. And we've seen in a lot of people when they come to us with high homocysteine levels, and the doctors have given them a clean certificate about their heart health, and then we ask them about these symptoms that do you have trouble when you're climbing stairs, do you have trouble when you're walking at a faster pace, and then they're like, yes, how did you know? And then we just say that because we saw your homocysteine levels are high. So with heart it is harder to predict than it is with diabetes. But one thing everyone needs to learn is that all of these diseases are interlinked, right? So every single metabolic dysfunction has an impact on another part of your body. So you can't just be diabetic and your heart is functioning absolutely well. Or you can't just have high BP and then your heart health is absolutely stellar. It is impossible for that to happen because the body is one unit. So if one thing is going wrong in your body, then it's impacting another aspect of your body for sure. Okay, that's why it becomes important to talk about these lifestyle diseases, the ones that cause what we call as a metabolic dysfunction. I'm just quickly going to share my screen because, yeah, that's fine. All right, so why is this so important from the Indian context is chronic diseases are a leading cause of death in India, even before COVID came, right? Even before coronavirus came, coronavirus isn't even killing that many people, but even before this entire fear of coronavirus came, India was the world leader in diabetes. It ranks third in obesity. And if you look at the threat due, like, just the causes of death compared to other things like global warming, bird flu, terrorism, and all of that, obesity, heart problems, and diabetes are the biggest killers. And that is what I spoke of even when I posted on Facebook that, even with people with COVID-19, the highest comorbidities are in people who have an underlying health condition, whether diagnosed or undiagnosed, which explains why a lot of people say that this person was healthy and he still died of COVID. The root cause for that is this person probably had an undiagnosed health problem, like maybe there was a very high vitamin D deficiency, or maybe that person already was insulin resistant and didn't know about it. And when they contracted the virus, things just went down south and it resulted in a fatality. So India has 77, this is last year's data, India had 77 million diabetics. Every year this number keeps going up. And I think Indians genetically are programmed to manifest diabetes more than anything else. That's why we are the world leader in diabetes. And people, even if you don't know, if you've not been following the COVID statistics, the biggest comorbidity for COVID-19 is with people who have insulin resistance and diabetes, the biggest, right? So the chance of you surviving COVID-19 if you have poor blood sugar management and very high levels of diabetes just becomes higher, which is why it's important that you understand that you first have to fix your internal health dysfunctions, and only then will you be able to deal with any kind of immune system attack that comes from different pathogens in the environment. So chronic diseases were and still are a leading cause of death in India. India is the world leader in diabetes. It ranks third in obesity. We have to do something about it. We have to take control of our own health. And I mean, even before COVID, this was the projection, right? That the disease burden was going to cost India $6.2 trillion by 2030. Now with COVID, it's even become worse. So this is why it's important for us to talk about this. And we spoke of what undiagnosed diabetes will look like. We spoke of what undiagnosed high BP might feel like. We spoke of what undiagnosed heart conditions might feel like. Obesity rarely goes undiagnosed because it's very easy for you to see. It's a very visual phenomena, right? So if you gain weight, you can see on your weighing scale that you've gained weight. If you are gaining excess fat around your midsection, your pants are not going to fit you. They're going to be tighter. You're going to have to open up your belt a couple of notches. So obesity is not that hidden as much as the other ones are. But all of them put together definitely are bigger killers than this entire COVID pandemic. And that is what we really need to focus our attention on. That is what everyone needs to be still talking about. Instead of diverting our attention on sanitizing ourselves and wearing masks and going out. All right. So what are the root causes of these chronic health dysfunctions, right? So I'm just going to show you this slide and then I'm going to stop sharing my screen. The number one root cause. So what we do at Thrive is we analyze people's blood reports to see what is really going on in their body, right? So I'll take you through a few cases that we worked on. But let's say somebody comes to us with diabetes. What we do is we ask them to get their blood test done, and then we ask what is really creating diabetes in this person's body. Is it liver dysfunction? Is it insulin resistance? So we found that in almost every case of blood test that comes to us, there are always underlying deficiencies. And a lot of you might be aware of vitamin D deficiency. Like a lot of people get their blood test done and they know that they're deficient in vitamin D. But there are other nutrients also. B12 is there. Especially people who are vegan are super deficient in B12. So B12, vitamin D, magnesium, zinc, protein. There are so many nutrients that our body needs as raw material to function optimally. Like for your pancreas to make insulin, it needs chromium. Chromium is one of the minerals that's required in a lot of enzymatic processes. And if you're deficient in chromium, then your body's ability to make these enzymes and all of that is going to be impaired. So in our analysis, we found out that deficiencies are often one of the underlying root causes why people get sick. How to find out if you're deficient or not? It's really simple. You get your blood test done and we'll know, right? What do you do once you find out you're deficient? I'll come to that, how to fix these lifestyle diseases. But deficiencies is one of the root causes that we have found out that creates problems for people when it comes to health. Then the next one that we've seen as a root cause for people's health to go downwards is toxins, right? So when I say toxins and when I'm putting this image of like a drum with a skull and crossbones on it, people don't understand that, you know, toxins are not just in a factory. So when I say toxins, even when we do our blood tests and when people come to us and like we show them that there are toxins in the bloodstream, they're like, kahan se aaye toxins, right? How come so many chemicals are there in my body? What people don't know is the food that you eat, if it is not organic, if it is not pesticide free, it's going to release a lot of toxins in your body. There is a particular toxin, there's a particular pesticide called glyphosate, which has been used in a lot of, I mean, that chemical has been used in a lot of pesticides, and glyphosate remains in the soil. It enters into the animals' bloodstreams also that eat that plant that's been sprayed with glyphosate, and it goes into your blood, and it creates a whole lot of health problems, right from genetic mutation to even creating cancer. So toxins, they come from the food that we eat if you're eating non-organic, conventionally grown produce. Secondly, toxins can come from the household care products that you use. So and this is why, in fact, the next FB Live that I'm doing it on toxins, and I'm partnering with Adrish, which is doing phenomenal work in ensuring people live toxin-free lives. But toxins also come in from the personal care product and household products that you use. So, you know, if you're using Harpic in your bathroom, for example, if you ever look at the ingredients that are there in Harpic, you'll see that it is actually poison, because the if accidentally consumed, or if keep away from children is there, and if accidentally consumed, visit a call up the poison control center. All of those things are written because it is poison. So we are using these things like Harpic, we're using these things like Domex, we're using these things like bleach in our house, we're using all these antibacterial soaps. All of these are loaded with poisons and toxins, and every time you apply it on your skin, every time you apply it on your face, every time it's around your body is going to absorb a lot of it. So these toxins come in, they start messing with your cellular integrity. So we have cells in our body, right? So these cells start getting damaged by toxins. A lot of toxins go and replace nutrients in your body. So if you're somebody who is using aluminum for cooking very often, right? What will happen is that aluminum will leach into your food, and it will go and replace zinc in your cells. Now, zinc is a nutrient that is essential for, again, a lot of cellular functions. But if aluminum is going in and sitting there, then zinc has no place in your cell, and then you're going to become zinc deficient, and then you're going to present with some or the other lifestyle disease. The same thing with your non-toxic cookware. So non-toxic cookware has so many carcinogens that get released when heat is applied to it. So all these carcinogens now become part of your food, and then it's going into your body, and it's going to create disease. I was speaking of bleach. A lot of bleaches, your floor wipes, your Domex and all of that, they have a lot of chlorine in them. Chlorine is a halogen. It's a molecule that can compete with iodine, which is what your thyroid needs. So if you're using a lot of these highly chemical based products, these are going to replace important nutrients in your body. And for example, if chlorine is replacing iodine, it's going to create a thyroid dysfunction in your body, because iodine is a very, very important molecule that your thyroid needs to make the thyroid hormones. So that's how toxins can impact your health. They can cause genetic manipulation, they can cause cellular dysfunction, they can replace nutrients, and you lose health in the process. So why do you even need something like that to clean your floor? Why do you even need such toxic products? Like, there are so many shampoos with things that even I can't pronounce, right? Like, if you look at the shampoo bottle, you'll see ingredients that look right out of a chemistry lab. And you're putting that chemistry lab on your head, on your skin, on your scalp, which is the most absorptive surface. And that is going to get absorbed into your body. And then your liver has to work so hard to get rid of those toxins. So be very careful about the products that you use that are on your body and in your household, because all of them are going to become part of this beautiful body that we have. So deficiencies, how to find out if that's happening? Blood test. Toxins also we can find out from a blood test if there is a toxin overload. And the best way to fix that is to eliminate these toxins from your body and your environment completely. Then the third root cause that we often find in our analysis when it comes to people's health are pathogens. So pathogens needs no introduction. Especially now with corona, everyone has become aware of viruses and bacteria. We have seen, so especially in cases like chronic acid reflux, where people have acidity issues all the time, where they've been given antacids for long, where everything that they eat triggers acidity. We found a particular bacteria called H. pylori that is responsible for it. For women who have a tendency towards fibroids and cysts, we found that there's a virus called as the Epstein-Barr virus that creates a lot of dysfunctions. Even in cases of fibromyalgia, we've seen it's the Epstein-Barr virus that creates that health problem. So the thing with pathogens is these exist in our environment. All the germs that we are going to be exposed to will always be a part of the environment. There is no hiding from them unless you're living in a sterile container like a lab rat. If you are going to be interacting with nature, with environment, you are going to be exposed to a whole lot of bacteria, viruses, fungi. In fact, the human microbiome, so there are studies being done on it, and what they found is, like, a human being is mostly 90% viral bacterial DNA and just about 10% core human DNA. So given that we share our microbiome with so many other entities, other beings from this planet, it's impossible to not be exposed to a pathogen. Pathogen basically means a bacteria or a virus that is going to do more harm than help in your body. So why do we say we've seen diseases? Because of pathogens. The thing is, your body, actually your immune system is here to maintain a balance between the good guys and the bad guys. So if your immune system is compromised because of deficiencies or because of toxins, then the pathogens can get an upper hand and they can start creating diseases. They are always there as a signaling mechanism more than anything else. So pathogens don't come to kind of devour you, right? They are not there to completely eat you. We live a very symbiotic relationship with them. So every time a pathogen load goes up, it's basically an indicator to you to tell that, hey, something's wrong. So it's creating an increase of this kind of a bacterial growth. Please fix that issue so that the balance can be maintained again. And we've always seen, so with pathogens, we don't really do anything to kind of eliminate them, right? We just bring the body back into balance. So with the food that the body needs, with the nutrients that the body needs, eliminating the toxins that are feeding the pathogens, removing all the triggers for that pathogen overgrowth is how we've been able to prevent a health problem arising from a pathogen. But what kind of health problems do we see from pathogens? The most common are this digestive issues, right? So anybody who's going through a digestive dysfunction, your IBS, IBD, acid reflux, GERD, all of those are typically caused by a pathogen overload or an imbalance in the microbiome. So that is what symptomatically we know is creating imbalance. In our blood test also, from the WBC, from your CBC, we can actually make out if there's an infection in the body, right? Because if these guys are in balance, then your infection markers will never go up. It's only when the pathogen overload is so high that now the body is experiencing an infection, then your WBC and your blood test markers start changing. So through your blood tests, we know if you have a pathogen overload or not. We've seen pathogens trigger liver dysfunction. So hepatitis, which is inflammation of the liver, we've seen pathogens trigger that. So viral infections can cause a dysfunctional liver. Where else have we seen? I spoke of fibromyalgia, right? Where we've seen it's the Epstein-Barr virus that primarily is creating a lot of the symptoms of fibromyalgia. Otherwise, like I said, the cysts and the PCOD, PCOS kind of manifestations that we've seen, there also we've seen that once the pathogen overload comes down along with deficiencies being fixed and toxins being removed, that person's reproductive system actually starts recovering on its own. So that's where pathogens come in creating disease. Most people are very, very afraid of a virus right now. What everyone needs to understand is if the body is in a state of balance, there is nothing that the coronavirus can do to you. I personally have been exposing myself to the environment because I know what state my body is, right? I get my blood test done every 3 months. So I know that my deficiencies are all fixed. Like I don't have deficiencies except for the protein one, which I spoke of in my last week's FB Live when it came to plant-based nutrition. But I know what my health is like internally and I want to then stand the test of time, right? So I'm saying that if I'm healthy, then I should not be getting an infection. And it has been proven. Since March, I have been out, not social distancing with people, minimally using masks. Like if a store won't let me inside it without a mask, only there I wear the mask. But otherwise, I personally prefer not wearing a mask because I like breathing air. I have been hugging people. I've been shaking hands with people. My house help comes home. She comes from whatever area she lives in. And it's been 4 months and I'm still alive without getting a sniffle, right? So I know what it takes to have a body that stays in balance, whether or not you have the biggest pandemic of the century going around. So that is very important to know that pathogens can harm you only if the rest of your body is in a state of imbalance. Pathogens can do nothing to you if your body is in balance. Nothing. They'll just come and go and they'll be like, this place, I can't do anything. Like it'll feel like, the party is like not happening at all. It'll just go away. So pathogens can't really do anything to you unless your body is not in a state of balance. But if it is in a state of imbalance, then pathogens can trigger disease. That's what we've seen in our cases so far. All right. The third, I mean, the fourth root cause of people, experiencing different kinds of lifestyle diseases, and this is what most people know about. People don't know about deficiency. People don't know about toxins. People don't know about pathogens as much as they know about how food creates lifestyle diseases. And when I say food creates lifestyle diseases, I'm referring particularly to a category of food that I call as Frankenfood. Because like Frankenstein's monster, right? Frankenfood is not real food. It's food that's made using different components of real food, and then it's sold to you as this is food. So, for example, this orange juice that comes in a Tetra Pak, you look at the ingredients, and I don't know, I don't care how much they say natural and all of that, but it's mostly just orange pulp with a few flavors and colors, and it gets sold to you as orange juice. The worst Frankenfood, I think, is Maggie, because Maggie is nothing like food. Like, I don't even know what and all they use to make Maggie, but Maggie just tastes good, and that's why people eat it. But if you actually try to understand, Ismay, what is food in this? What is going to give me my nutrition? There is zero, there is nothing. And Coke, sodas, right? Sodas are just sugar and water and air and flavor and essence, and that is it. And then people are addicted to these things, and these are Frankenfoods, because these things, when you put into your body, they actually create so many diseases. So we'll go more into that a little bit when I explain what is the purpose of food. But Frankenfood is one reason why people get sick. So if you're eating like sandwiches and burgers and pizza, and especially the store-bought stuff, and then you're eating Maggie and you're drinking soda, there is no way your body is going to create health. You are going to end up with diabetes, you're going to end up with excess weight, you are going to end up with high BP, you're going to end up with digestive disorders. If it's not happening now, it's going to happen over time, but I can guarantee it. Like my master's degree in nutrition, I can vouch that if you're eating this kind of food, it is going to result in some kind of a chronic health problem. It might not be apparent, especially if you're younger. Maybe you're somebody in your 20s, you're like, 25, and you're doing this. Your body is very resilient, right? Like I said, the body's entire innate nature is to heal and repair all the time. So your body is going to try and deal with this abuse for a very long time, but at some point it's going to give up, and that's when you're going to be diagnosed with a health dysfunction. So Frankenfood, fake food, food that is not really real food, that is going to definitely trigger health problems. And we have seen this in so many cases, that people are eating food that is not right for the body, and that is what is creating disease in their body, right? So when I say people are eating food that's not right for their body, we have, all of us are unique. Our bodies are, we have this thing called as bio individuality, which means every person's body is unique. So what might work very well for my body might not always work for another person's body. That's why you can never generalize nutrition. You just can't. Each person reacts differently to food. Like there's one girl in our tribe who is extremely allergic to sweet potatoes. Who would expect an allergy to sweet potatoes, right? But she needed hospitalization when she ate sweet potatoes. So each person's body reacts to food differently, and then it's important to know what is it that your body needs. So this understanding is also what we help people with, right? Because your body has a feedback mechanism. You eat something, it's going to create some kind of a feedback loop for you. So like in my case, when I eat these, bigger beans like rajma and chole, it gives me a lot of digestive discomfort. And I tried to fix it by taking enzymes. I tried to fix it by doing so many things. And I realized that no, this food is just not working for my body. If I eat it in large quantities, smaller quantities are okay. So each of us has this biofeedback mechanism, right? For some of us, rice might make us sluggish. Rice shouldn't, right? Like, rice is actually absolutely okay. A lot of people avoid rice, especially diabetics. They avoid rice because they're afraid that it will trigger their blood sugar spikes. It might not be the rice that's doing it. It might be the dietary fat that you're eating that's creating insulin resistance, and that's making your diabetes worse. So understanding what is it that your body needs and which food works best for your body is what ultimately creates health. Okay, so eating that Frankenfood category of foods is definitely a no-no, like just a no-no. So we are still at root causes. Let me just see. There's one last one I think that I want to share. Yeah, and this if I start talking about this one, I'll never stop, but I'll keep it short. This last one, right? Stress is one big reason why a lot of us get sick. So you could have zero deficiencies, you could have no toxins in your body, your immune system could be absolutely working like a stellar super Mercedes Benz kind of level of maintaining your body's balance. You could be eating the healthiest foods, but if you're stressed, due to many things happening, right? Like due to life events or due to how you perceive and respond to stress or due to the relationships in your life. Maybe you're living with like a lot of passive aggressive people. Maybe your boss is really an asshole. We don't know, right? So a lot of times that mental stress itself starts triggering a lot of dysfunctions in the body. And how that happens is we all have this system called as the adrenal system. So your adrenal glands are right there above your kidneys, and their job is entirely to continuously keep prepping your body in response to the environment that you're in. So if you're in a highly relaxed environment, like if you're getting a massage and if you're listening to really calm music, your body feels different versus you being in a environment where somebody's yelling at you and like, you know, you're being like bombarded with emails and like, you know, things are just going wrong and there's no electricity, your internet's not working. A situation like that, your body is going to be at a different state, right? It's going to be, you're going to be sweating a lot more, your heart is going to be racing a lot. So that is your body's natural response mechanism to keep you prepared for whatever stimulus is coming from the environment. And what happens, so this is an evolutionary mechanism. It evolved when, you know, our ancestors were like hunter gatherers and they were foraging for their food, and if they went to some place and there was a tiger there, they would have to quickly decide whether to run away from that tiger or whether to um, kind of fight that tiger or hide, right? So the body would need to prep accordingly in response to that. So that adrenal system is an evolutionary mechanism, and it's supposed to switch on and switch off. Like our ancestors would have had opportunities to go to their caves and relax after a tiger encounter and tell each other, hey bro, don't go there, there's a tiger around the lake. But in our day-to-day lives now, we don't really get that opportunity, right? So what happens with us is we are facing one tiger after the other. We're facing a tiger for finances, we're facing a tiger for time, we're facing a tiger for energy. Now with the lockdowns and people not having house help, everybody's doing their full like, you know, full day's work, and then they also have to take care of the house and like their kids and their spouses, and it's just never ending, right? People don't seem to be getting time off at all. So this kind of stress then starts impacting other organ systems. So your adrenals first go. Once your adrenals go, then it goes to your thyroid, then your pituitary. So the entire chain of events in your body starts creating more and more dysfunction. So we've had one case of this person whose blood sugar levels are optimal for a while, and then every time she experiences a stressor, her blood sugar levels just shoot up, right? Nothing else changes. Her diet is on par. She's taking all her supplements. Everything is right. But the stress that comes from the external world immediately triggers the blood sugar levels to go up, because the body says, oh my God, I have to be prepared. Let's release some more glucose so that we have more energy to fight and deal with the stress. So that's how stress can create disease. We have many real life examples where we've seen that happen, even with BP. If everything else is taken under control and then stress is the only thing that's impacting that person, we've seen BP shoot up. So stress is the fifth root cause of why people can get sick. It's 5:15. I had planned on sharing a few case studies, but let's see if we have enough time for that. So I'm going to talk of this guy. His name is Amit. He came to us because he had severe acid reflux and he had high BP. And he was on acidity medications for nearly 12 years. He was on BP medication for 10 years. And all that we needed to do in his case was we had to find out his root cause, right? So what was really happening in his case was his liver enzymes were short. His liver was completely dysfunctional. He had other things as well. He had an H. pylori infection, but then as we started fixing these root causes, right? So this is what we saw in his blood test. As we started fixing these root causes, his BP started stabilizing. We had to treat his acid reflux with an antibiotic for the H. pylori because it was just not responding to herbs. And once the H. pylori infection went away, his acidity disappeared. And he couldn't believe it that he had taken acidity medication like antacids, PPIs twice a day for 12 years, and he didn't need to anymore, right? So that was just gone. And then his BP also started stabilizing. So he went off all his medications once we started resolving his root causes. There was this lady who came to us with, like she said, she was overweight and she wanted to lose weight, and she said she also had lethargy and depression and all of that, and she was in pain, like her thighs and her calves would ache a lot. So what happened with her is we discovered that her thyroid was really dysfunctional. So once we started fixing her thyroid, and there were reasons why her thyroid was dysfunctional, right? So if you can see here, there were heavy metals, there was Epstein-Barr virus, she had protein malnourishment, she was deficient in iodine. So there were so many things going on, multiple nutrient deficiencies. As we started fixing that, she started losing weight. Her depression literally went away, because people don't know this, that sometimes that feeling of low, like life is not worth living, can just happen because your thyroid is not working well. So her lethargy went away, her pain miraculously, like she says this, that her pain miraculously disappeared, right? All because we found the root cause of what was creating her health problems. Now, I want to now quickly come to food because we don't have time, but most of us don't understand what is really the purpose of food. We use it like, a social networking system. We use it like a bonding system. Now with lockdowns, so we have so many chefs and unknown chefs that have come out from their kitchens. But people use food as a lot of things other than what it is supposed to be. People use food to, get over their boredom. So they'll become creative with food, and they'll feel like food is a good entertainment mechanism. So many American sitcoms, for example, have shown that, when there's a breakup, then the girl goes and takes a tub of ice cream from the fridge, and then she's digging into the ice cream and she feels better. So we get misled by media about what food is supposed to do also. So we use food as an emotional backup system. But food is none of that, right? So when you eat something, let's say you eat a mango, okay, that mango is going to get broken down first in your mouth. It's going to be digested by the enzymes that are there in your mouth. It's going to go through your stomach. It's going to get broken down even more in your stomach. Then it's going to go to your small intestine. And then with all the digestive juices, it's going to be broken down, absorbed, and released into the rest of your body. What is going to get released into your body? Glucose is going to go there. You're going to get some vitamins. You're going to get some minerals. You're going to get a lot of water. Things are going to be released from that mango into your body. Now your cells and your genes in these cells are going to use this information to say, oh, this is what has come to me. Can I create health with this? Right? So it is literally like, you can actually manipulate your biological software by what you put into your mouth. You can actually change your genes by whatever it is that you're eating. Which is why a lot of people, when they come to Thrive, and after 3 months, they'll say that it feels like they've reverse aged, right? Like they really look like their 10-year younger cousin or sister. Because what eating the right food does, when you start giving in the right information into your body, when you stop sending in frankenfood, when instead of a soda, you're going to drink clean filtered water, instead of a sandwich, you're going to eat maybe a really well made, if you're plant based, then maybe a good dal without oil and some brown rice. Or maybe if you're somebody who's following a carnivore kind of a diet, you're going to eat some clean animal protein. When you do that, then your food is receiving information about health. It's saying, oh, when I eat this, I can use this molecule and create something good out of it. When you send in junk food is going to create junk health. And I'm glad they call it junk food. At least they don't call it something else. But junk food will always create junk health. Eating the right food that is right for your body will always create optimal health for you. So one needs to understand that food is information. Food is not just calories, right? So every bite you eat, everything that you put in your mouth goes in and tells your body whether you want to create health or whether you want to create disease. So that is the role of food. And that is how we actually have been able to make the changes, right? So when I speak of how to reverse any particular chronic health disease, whether it is diabetes, right? So first we find out the root causes. Why is this person diabetic? Is it insulin resistance? Is it a deficiency of chromium? Is it just stress? Once we find that root cause out, then we start working on resolving that root cause. And food plays such an important role here. So eating the right kind of food that is right for your body is of vital importance. It is what sends vital energy into your body. So when I say vital energy, it's like prana, right? So it is the energy that heals your body. Eating the right food literally creates this energetic imprint in your body that creates health. And this is what none of the pharma companies will tell you. This is what none of the mainstream like they just won't tell you that it is so simple to take care of your health by eating the right kind of food. In fact, I actually, I don't know if this will work here. So this is what this drug can do, right? So the screen size might be too small for you to see, but this is just an example of an analysis. So we had so many reds in this person's report, and um, after like 3 months, most of the reds got fixed and they became either blue or green. So they a couple of things, there was still scope for improvement. The rest of them all got fixed, right? So this is actually hard evidence data from somebody's blood test showing that just changing what this person was eating and figuring out what was this person needed to eat actually brought about a change in their internal health. So why and how do we get misled by food? Okay, this I want everyone to see. Is my screen visible? Yeah. Okay, so this is the report that I was talking of. I thought my screen was shared. It wasn't. So this is the report where you can see there was a change in their blood test. I quickly want to show you how and why we get misled about food.
चपर 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 चुप रहने का टैक्स लगता है क्या? और ये पसीने की दुकान अपने पास रख। हाँ, मैं पागल हो गया हूँ। दिमाग का कोरमा बन गया है, कोरमा।
सुन, स्निकर्स का।
क्यों बे?
क्योंकि जब तुझे भूख लगती है ना, तो एकदम हीरोइन बन जाता है। अब ठीक है? ठीक है। हंगर अच्छे को बदल देता है।
ड्राइवर समझ रखा है? जा, मुझे नहीं खेलना वेलना।
चल, निकाल। Hungry, grab a Snickers.
See, what an ad like this does is it somewhere there deeply programs you into believing that if you're hungry, if you're having an energy crash, a chocolate is the right thing to eat. We have treated so many diabetics who've come to us, and we've they say they carry candies and chocolates in their purses, or they keep it in the on near their bed in the night, because if they have an hypoglycemic episode, they just want to make sure they get sugar. It's the worst thing to do to your body to eat something like this when you're lower energy. I'll show you one more. Okay, so this is another ad, and what happens is, now you might be laughing when I'm showing you these things.
Hey, you lazy people! Come on! Come on! Let's get the morning on. Start the day in a healthy way. Come on, move along. Come on! Let's get the morning on. Start the day in a healthy way.
Like fully active family, very happy, a family that you'd want to be like. Everybody's exercising.
And now breakfast, healthy breakfast. मजेदार oats के साथ oats. मजेदार. जब ये healthy workout इतना मजेदार हो सकता है, then oats can also be मजेदार.
And then that is what she serves her kids.
Oats noodles. एक bowl oats के.
Ek to they're eating without brushing, and then they're eating dirty things like Maggie, and they're calling it like healthy food, right? So this is how most of us get misled about food. We watch these ads, subconsciously we get programmed into believing that this thing is a healthy choice. I have spoken to so many people who say, but oats Maggie, it's healthy, or atta Maggie, atta noodles, atta Patanjali atta noodles, it's healthy, right? So people get misled about what is actually healthy food because of this kind of media managed propaganda, right? So we don't even know what is the right kind of food for us to eat, and we eat this stuff because we think we're eating healthy because somebody has been advertising it like that, and that's what's playing on our mind. And it leads to disease, and then you're left wondering, Ki, "Arey, but I was eating very healthy food, how come I got a disease?" Right? So this is one way in which disease can be created. So how to reverse? Always first figure out what is going on in your body. Blood tests are the easiest way to do that. Then work on the root causes, and the root causes often tell you what you need to do, whether you need to change your eating habits, whether you need to like bring in some supplements if you're deficient in vitamin D, or whether you need to get rid of toxins that have been built up in your body. That the root cause analysis will always tell you. So once you find that out, just start working on them, right? So that is how you reverse any chronic disease. And it's nothing to be afraid of, because you can, like, we have done this in as less as 3 months with a lot of people. So that's what I just wanted to talk of. I'm going to look at the questions that have come in the chat here, and then I'm also going to look at the Facebook questions, and then we'll just do Q&A for as long as possible. So there's a question that says, does frequent consumption of medicine destroy gut microbiome? Yes, it does. Especially antibiotics. They're like the worst thing you can do to your gut microbiome. Sometimes you need them because you could have had a surgery, or you could have had an infection that is really severe, and then you need an antibiotic in that case. But they do destroy your gut microbiome. So if you're consuming medicines a lot, that not only destroys the gut microbiome, it also impacts your liver function. So then it becomes important to start working on reversing that. Could you tell us foods to reduce hypothyroid? So Mohini, there we have to first find out what is causing the hypothyroidism, right? So is it due to deficiencies? Is it due to toxins? Because if it's any of that, then just changing the food is not going to help with the hypothyroid issue. So with thyroid, it's always best to get blood tests done and finding out what is really creating that. All right, I'm going to see, Rutuja, can you see the, I'm just going to get my phone, because that's where I think I'll see the FB Live questions. Just give me a minute. So, Vriddhi, the painkiller that you mentioned, what we need to do there is first find out what's creating the pain, because periods are not supposed to be painful. If there is pain, then it's usually a magnesium deficiency or something else that's happening that's creating so much pain in the body. Periods generally, there is a slight discomfort, but you're not supposed to experience so much pain that you will need a painkiller. If you're taking a painkiller, yes, of course, it's going to create problems, because, it goes to the liver for having to process, and then there are other compounds that come with it. There are other things that are there in medication that really are not good for your health. So always first find out what is the root cause for that pain, and then figure out what can you do to reverse that without getting a sniffle, right? So I know what is... Okay, how do I mute myself on Facebook? Rutuja, you'll have to help me here, because what happens is when I am on Facebook, then that audio is playing. Silly question, but what about dark chocolate? I have heard many times it's good for health and also for diabetic people. Is there any truth to it? So the thing with chocolate is it usually has sugar and dairy both. And both of these are not something that I would advise people to have. Chocolate by itself, if you don't have a BP issue, is okay, because if you do have BP problems, then chocolate has caffeine and theobromine, two compounds that can increase BP. There is no evidence to support that dark chocolate is good for diabetic people at all. What is good for diabetic people is finding out what is creating their diabetes and reversing that. Then you will not be a diabetic person, and then maybe you can enjoy dark chocolate without dairy and sugar, like you can make with cacao nibs or something like that. But there is no evidence to that statement that dark chocolate is good for diabetic people. Yes, chocolate has antioxidants, but the always look at food as a net positive, right? So if all the negatives in that food are making it so bad for your body that whatever one thing that food is going to give to you is not such a good thing, then I would consider that food net negative. And with chocolate, it really becomes specific to each person's health condition, because if you have like a predisposition towards BP, then that's going to create health problems. If BP is normal due to medication we are taking, how does it become dangerous? Corona perspective. So see, with medication, what you're doing is really suppressing your BP. You're not curing your high BP problem. Every pharmaceutical medicine is only suppressing. In homeopathy or Ayurveda, at least there is a root cause kind of a resolution, right? So homeopathy also looks at root causes, but most allopathic medicines only suppress the symptoms. So whatever is triggering your high BP is still a health problem. And then with that high BP, if you do get exposed to the virus and then your body is not able to deal with it, then it becomes a difficult case, right? So always find out what is triggering the BP so that you can get off your BP medication. If BP is normal due to medication, it is just a suppressed case. Like, there's too much noise outside, so you close the windows. So it feels like there is no noise, but the minute you open the window again, all that noise is going to come. It's like that. How to reverse pre-diabetic condition, Stanley? That's really easy. I think Rutuja can ping you, or if you could just send us your number, we'll help you with that. But pre-diabetic is like, it is just with diet. We don't even have to do too much effort there. We just look for the root causes. If it is insulin resistance, then that insulin resistance we reverse with the kind of recommendations we make with food, and it really reverses. In fact, we have a research paper that we are publishing sometime next week, because we work with so many diabetic cases and we've actually seen reversal of diabetes, which people can't believe, right? Like even doctors sometimes make fun of me, like, how can you say diabetes can be reversed? I'm like, I can say that because I have data. So we are publishing our first research paper where we've reversed diabetes in cases with our approach. Will Himalayan salt cause iodine deficiency? No, Mani. Because that iodized salt, which we're getting in the market, that actually has other additives. So I recommend people not to even have that salt, because that iodine is not even in the most absorbable form. So what we do, if we see there is iodine deficiency, we recommend, if the person is vegan, then we recommend seaweed and kelp or dulse flakes, sea vegetables basically. If the person is not a vegan, then we bring in some animal sources for iodine. But switching to Himalayan salt instead of using iodized salt will not cause iodine deficiency. Which food is okay for anxiety? Vinay, that I can't answer like that, but I know bananas help because bananas have tryptophan, which is a amino acid that is a precursor for a neurotransmitter called serotonin, which helps you be in a state of calm. So bananas are really helpful when it comes to anxiety, but always find what is the root cause of that anxiety, right? Because in so many of our cases, we found that the people who have a lot of heavy metal toxins in their body also have anxiety as a symptom. So always find out what is the root cause. Suggest food or diet for reversing pre-diabetic. I can't do that, Stanley, like this. I really have to look at your blood test to see what is creating your pre-diabetes, because we don't even know what you're eating currently. So I say giving a diet recommendation like this on a call is close to impossible. What can be done to find the root cause of high BP? Blood tests. That's simple. So you get the blood work you need done. Rutuja can, I have your number also, so I can ping you, get your blood test done. If it's for you that you're asking, or if it's for somebody else, get their blood test done. and then we can figure out what's creating that high BP. So ghee is known to have a lot of medicinal properties in Ayurveda, but recent research is showing dairy and diabetes connection. Yes, Mani. So we actually put a article on our blog. I'll send that link as well. I'm just taking notes of links to send. So I'll send that link about how dairy can trigger diabetes. And I think Indians are predisposed to diabetes. Like I really, because every blood test that's coming to us now, we are seeing insulin resistance and pre-diabetes in that. So I think Indians are genetically predisposed to diabetes. Dairy, what happens is it's very high in saturated fat. So if you have a genetic predisposition to diabetes, then there is a tendency for your food to deposit this fat into your cells, and it becomes something called as myocellular fat. Then that intramyocellular fat makes glucose metabolism more difficult. So we have seen cutting out dairy, even ghee, all of that helps really in bringing down blood sugar levels. But I'll send you the link to that article that we wrote. It's there on the Thrive website. All right. Any other questions?
Mugdha, is it okay if I ask a question orally rather than type? It will take me a long time to type.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So my question is again for people who don't have diabetes, and for since our ancient, thousands of years of Indians using dairy has been known, and our parents, our grandparents, they have not had issues with dairy, nor have they had issues with grains like wheat. So now that this whole new research is coming up, obviously the cases are rising for diabetes and a lot of autoimmune disorders as well, where people are being asked to cut off dairy completely or gluten completely. What is your take on that? It's all this ancient ages of consuming and the latest research. So can you comment on that?
Sure. So a couple of things there, right, Mani? One is, see, it's not like our parents are disease free. Like our parents' generation definitely has, and I'm generalizing, right? I'm speaking of that generation as a whole. Like my uncles and aunts and all of them, they are not disease free, right? They're not living lives where they are actually technically what I would call disease free. My grandparents, on another hand, they lived pretty long lives, and they were like walking until maybe the last few months. Yes, they still died of degenerative disorders where like the body started giving up, but it was not the same state that it is in my parents' generation, right? So one of the things that's changed is our environment has changed a lot. There's a higher exposure to toxins. The kind of food that my grandparents ate was very different from. Still, my parents didn't have the exposure to the kind of food we eat and now our kids eat, right? So like KFC and McDonald's didn't even exist in our parents' generation. So our grandparents really ate more natural whole foods as a part of their everyday life. Sugar was a limited accessory thing, right? So only in case of festivals they would make something sweet. So that in some way explains how they've led pretty healthy lives, and even ghee and all was not in abundance. So if you look at Ayurveda, because I think I'd done this thing with an Ayurvedic practitioner about a month ago, and she is a whole food plant-based. She's a vegan, right? So the question that was like, Ayurveda has been there in Ayurveda as a ghee has been there in Ayurveda as a treatment practice also. So what is the deal with that? And she said one of the things, so ghee was something that you could carry with you for long distances without it getting spoiled. So it was a good source of calories in that time and age where people would mostly go by foot, and they didn't have the luxury of cars and all of that. So ghee was used as a high calorie travel companion, or it was used as a solvent for, like, because Ayurveda is all about plant-based compounds, and a lot of plant-based compounds are alkaloids in nature, right? So it needs a fatty base to dissolve. So she said those are the two purposes why ghee was used, and we don't live that kind of life anymore. We have extremely sedentary lives. And then my perspective of how much exposure to toxins has increased. Food itself has changed, right? So wheat was not an indigenous grain to begin with. In India, we had millets mostly, and we had rice. Like the south was all rice. In the northeast was rice. In the western, like Maharashtra, we had millets. And in the north, in Punjab and all, it was mostly corn. The rice there was lesser, but wheat came with the British. Wheat was not one of our indigenous grains. And even then, that wheat might still have been okay. But what wheat has undergone is it's gone through a lot of genetic modification, because it's a very high commercial yield crop, right? Like, wheat is used in so many industries apart from food. So, like, even if you go to buy cashew, you'll have that wheat coated cashew, right? Like all those roasted nuts. But wheat is also used in shampoos. Like gluten is there in shampoos. So wheat is a very high commercial yield crop, and because it's that profitable, they don't want to leave it to the vagaries of nature, that if there's a drought, there's no crop, right? So they've genetically modified wheat. It's become drought resistant, it's become pest resistant. But then that wheat is not something that's going to work well with our genes, because you can't be eating genetically modified food and expect your genes to not react to it. So that's why. So now wheat is a problem. And even if people are eating emmer wheat, I'm still seeing they have issues. There are very few wheat insensitive people. And I think it's just a matter of time, because something will show up, because it's not just gluten in wheat. There is also gliadinin, which is there in wheat, which can actually cause cell rupture and cell damage. So it is quite an inflammatory food. And that's why I've seen, like, even in our protocols, we take people off wheat and dairy in the first week itself. And this really can experience so you might not know what it feels like to avoid it until you avoid it completely, and then you eat it occasionally and you say, oh, this is what happens when I eat this. But I think it's the lives we are living now and the environment that's making these more troublesome for us.
Thank you, Mugdha.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, Mugdha. Can I
Hi.
speak?
Yeah, sure.
I want to know, where is your clinic? Like, if we want to come and do whatever is there.
Sure.
So where is your clinic?
So our office is in Baner, but the way we work is entirely online, right? So you are more than welcome to visit us.
Okay.
We love meeting people, but if you need to get your stuff done, because see, blood tests, if we have to find out what's really going on, even if you want to talk to us, we can do an online consultation.
Okay.
And blood tests and all, anyway, you have to go and get it done from a lab, right? So there's no need to come and meet. If you want to meet, I'll be more than happy.
Okay.
In Thrive office, we just have one rule: no masks allowed inside office.
Okay. Okay. But what kind of blood test we need to do to find out our root
I think
causes?
Rutuja can help you with that. Rutuja, can you just ping her and then help her with that, so she can help figure out which blood test you need. All right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. Any other questions? All right, then. So let's end it here. And my email ID, I'm just going to send it to all of you. If you need to reach out, my email ID is mugdha.com. And if you have blood tests that you want us to look at, I'm just sending you the email ID. You can send your blood tests to.
हॅलो.
Yeah.
हा, मी विनया बोलतेय.
हा.
हे 6 वाजता प्रचंड मला भूक लागते, असं क्रेविंग सारखं होतं. तर प्री डायबिटिक कंडिशन म्हणता येईल का त्याला? म्हणजे अगदी जेवले, मला खूप खाल्ल्याशिवाय.
ते ना 2 कंडिशन मध्ये होतं. इदर इन्सुलिन रेझिस्टन्स मध्ये किंवा एड्रेनल डिस्फंक्शन असेल तर तसं होतं. सो बेस्ट
हो.
तुमच्याकडे ब्लड टेस्ट असतील ना तर मी तो जो ईमेल आयडी पाठवलाय analysis@thrive.fnc ला जस्ट सेंड इट देअर सो
आहे माझ्याकडे मी हो
देन
मी
सेंड इट देअर
थायरोकेअर मध्ये काय घेतलं HB1C पण नॉर्मल आहे.
हा पाठवून द्या आणि वी कॅन सी राईट
Okay,
कारण
okay.
इव्हन लाईक असं वेट वगैरे पण असतं ना लोकांना वाटतं की वेटचं आणि ब्लड टेस्टचं काहीच रिलेशनशिप नसेल बट वी हॅव सीन लाईक सो मेनी टाइम्स what you might not know is a health problem actually we can find out from your blood test only. So if any of you have your recent blood work, if you want us to just take a look at it and give you kind of a overview of what we are seeing, please send them to analysis@thrivefnc.com.
येस थँक्यू सो मच.
Welcome.
अरे मग
All right, any other questions? All right then, thank you guys. Thank you so much for being here. If you want, so I'm going to do another live on Instagram at 6:30. So if you want to pass on that message, I'll mostly be speaking of the same stuff, but like obviously it will be different also because I'm not a robo. So
Yes, yes.
if you
We
want
will-
anyone to attend, you can guide them there. All right?
yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mugdha.
Bye-bye.
नाही तिचं